So I have 4 cubes here that I found at my local dollar store. And I am taking some white Wise Owl primer and a Gen foam brush, and I just primed all sides of the cube. Now these cubes measure 4 inches. And once I had 1 coat of primer on, I allowed it to dry, and I did go back and do a second coat of primer as well. Once everything was dry, I took some vintage duck egg Wise Owl paint, and using a art brush, I just applied the vintage duck egg to all sides of the cube as well. Once the first coat of paint dried, I then applied a second coat of the vintage duck egg. And after the primer and the paint is on, now the previous image that was on the cubes is now fully covered. The Wise Owl primer comes in white, clear, or gray. Once that was all dry, I took this stencil and a foam roller and some chocolate Wise Owl paint, and I just rolled on with a very small amount of paint the stencil to the top of each cube. I then went back and I stenciled it onto the back of each cube and then the sides of the 2 end cubes. I took a 220 grit sandpaper and I just gave each cube a very light sanding. The sanding just helps take out any imperfections in your stencil. You can give it a distressed look if you wish, and it just helps smooth out the paint as well. I then placed them so the vintage duck egg was facing up, and I had grabbed this wooden word home from Walmart. They are a peel and stick. And I got them for, I want to say, $2.85. I took some E6000 and I placed a letter on the front of each cube. Now these are already adhesive, but the E6000 will hold the word on there better. I then allowed that to dry, and then I took a tape measure in my first cube, and I just made a little dot in the center of the cube, and using my drill, I just drilled a hole on both sides of the cube. And I did this for each cube, and you want to make sure you're drilling your hole on the sides of them, not on the top or the bottom. I then took 5 wooden beads and I painted them all with chocolate from Wise Owl paint. And I just slipped them onto a skinny art brush to allow them to dry. I allowed the beads to dry, and then I took some jute and I tied a knot at the end of the jute, and I cut it fairly long, and I slipped on my first wooden bead, and then I tied another knot at the end. I attached like a wooden stick here at the end of my jute using some tape. And this just helped me guide the jute through each hole that we had pre-drilled in the previous step. Once I strung the jute through, I tied a knot, and then I slipped on another bead and then tied another knot. And then I slipped the jute through my second cube, tied a knot, slipped on a bead, tied another knot, and then strung the jute through the third cube. And I basically just repeated that pattern until I had my jute fully strung through each cube and there was a bead in between each one. And then I just cut the ends here. And to finish it off, I took some Wise Owl salve and my palm brush, and I just applied some salve as a top coat. And you can see how it just brightens the paint. And once it was applied, I just took a paper towel and just rubbed it in lightly. And there you go, that's it. Now we just have this really inexpensive home decor. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Paint products can be found on our webpage at chalkitupfancy.com. And don't forget, you can check out some other tutorials over on our YouTube or our webpage. Have a great day.